We gotta put that back to use.
There's technical issues.
Oh, we're still a work in progress.
You get what you pay for. When you hire unexperienced talent, you get what you pay for. Hello, everyone. Welcome to...
Fire. It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. Whatever. You know, it's a thing. Hello, and welcome to Toilet Paper Fortune Cookie Podcast, Episode 2. Where's Micah? Oh, he's backstage.
He's backstage.
So we'll bring him on in a few minutes.
He's being very patient.
And as we get through our show here. So, Matt, you want to start us off? You want to start us off today and kind of give us an update?
Gee, Dave. Sure. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us again on this Friday. Yeah, raise a glass.
Happy Friday.
That looks very swanky.
It is kind of swanky. I'm drinking ginger, gin, and cran apple.
Ooh.
Gin and cran apple.
This is an Arnold Palmer with vodka.
Oh, very nice.
Which is actually really good for what ails you. And what ails me, which I've come to find out in the last week, hence my name, is that this past week I tested positive for the COVID-19 coronavirus, which we've all heard of. I'm pretty sure we've all heard of it. It's been in the news.
I don't know how to react. I want to be like, and I want to be like, oh, but you're fine.
Well, so here's the quick rundown. I had been tested about 6 weeks ago when it all started. I had some sinus problems and all this stuff, and my GP wanted me to come in and get tested. At the time, I tested negative. Fine. Cut to 6 weeks later. About 8 days ago, I noticed that things didn't taste or smell right, and it's one of the common symptoms of the COVID-19, where by Saturday, I could not smell anything, and I could taste very, very few things. So about a week ago. I didn't have a fever. I didn't have a cough. I had some mild aches, but that also was because I'm old. But by Tuesday, I called my doctor and she said, it's likely that you have it. We have tests. It's also confusing about who has tests and who doesn't have tests, but my doctor does in Midtown. And I went in and it took all of about a half an hour. She did the nasopharyngeal. And Wednesday, I got the confirmation that I was indeed positive. I think I'm in the very fortunate actual majority of people, the 80 to 85% of people have mild symptoms. Thus far, I have, knock on everything.
Yeah, great.
I check my temperature. I check my pulse oxygen to make sure you're getting enough oxygen. I have aspirin at the ready. I have vitamin C. I make juice every day. I'm staying active by not leaving the house. But
you're drinking vegetables. You told me you hate
drinking
vegetables. So you're drinking them. That's excellent.
Do not like them, so I drink them.
Good.
And I'm about 8 days through the 14-day typical time when the symptoms may exacerbate. So hopefully I'm on the other side of it. Again, I feel fine. Thank you to everybody on Facebook and beyond for checking in and saying hello. Everybody's dealing with something. This is my thing. And hopefully in a couple of weeks, I'll have the antibody test and we'll be able to donate plasma and whatnot. And in the meantime, I'm just going to take care of myself. And also, just to anybody who is concerned, I'm not cavalier about any of this stuff. If all of a sudden I feel sick, I'm going to the hospital.
Good.
St. Luke's, Mount Sinai is 8 blocks from here. I could walk if I need to. My doctor told me if anything changes drastically in my temperature or in my pulse ox to give her a call. I'm not being a hero. If something all of a sudden goes squirrely, I'm going to go get treated. And one of the great things about New York and the way that the folks here have handled things is the hospitals are no longer overrun. It's a testament to how our governor has handled things and how people here have handled things, that the numbers have dropped drastically. And if I were to get sick, I could have treatment. So I feel good. I'm glad to be here. It's obviously been an eventful week, but here we are, and let's talk about some good stuff. So yeah, that was my week.
All right, well, let's rock on. So first, or not first, but next, what I want to do is give a little shout out to the band Side Hustle for the use of their song. That is "Work with What You Got," and Matt Stokey chose that. He thought it was extremely on point for our podcast, which is totally working with what you got here. Because I mean, this was kind of rough start again,
and funky.
And we'll get it better. We'll get there. So bring on the comments and the questions. We're gonna try to keep up with stuff. We're gonna stick to the format that we were talking about last week. So we're going to give a quick little recap, sort of a business recap of this past week.
Here we are. Oh God.
And we're hearing ourselves. Again, you get what you pay for in the production value here. So I do want to, I wish I had the picture. I somehow I ran out of time today. On Facebook, if you go out and you search for Insignia Group, you will see a picture that we posted of all of our folks that came back last week. We were lucky enough to get funded in the first round of the CARES Act. We received our, as we said last week, we received our funding last week, this time last week, and we brought everybody back Wednesday. So that was a big deal for us as a small company trying to survive, brought our employees back. And look, we've got an opportunity working with car dealerships, working as the economy comes out of this. There's a slight chance that we're be in a better place as a small company than we were when we went into this. So fingers crossed things continue to evolve. What we see out there is, I think there's two dynamics happening that we can see through the car business anyway. One is people are really trying to figure out what the next steps look like. And our guests, Micah Davidson with Midwood Entertainment, we're going to really go deep into a discussion about what the music industry is going to look like, hopefully after this. And from the car business standpoint, what's the new normal? And then I'm sick of this shit. Let's get on with it, right? So there's like this, there's this tension going on of we've just got to push through, but we've got to figure out what it looks like when we do push through. So I would say on the whole, the stock market was sort of up and down. Business as usual is sort of trying to define itself. So I would say it was a pretty positive week because nothing terrible happened.
Sure.
We seem to be inching forward. So that would be my 3-minute recap of last week, of this past week. So cheers to Friday.
Right on. We're still here.
We are still here. All right. Any updates from, I checked it. We have over 426 members.
Yeah, we do.
In the group. So thank you for joining. Last week's episode had 329, and I used a calculator for this math because I'm an English major and I don't do math. So that was 77% of our group watched our first episodes. That's pretty good. That in a school, that's a C, right? So we're inching towards a B. So we got some cool comments coming in. Thanks for everybody for showing up. Dave West, Bob Woodard, Alice, hi Sassy, good to see you. Good to hear from you. Melly Simpson, my other sister. I got a good representation of the Stringer family here. All right, any other recaps from last week? And we can move on to our next segment.
I'll second what Dave said. Thanks so much for hanging out with us last week, and thanks so much for rewatching the podcast. We are going to be uploading the audio podcast to Podbean very, very shortly. We'll be uploading both the audio and the video to our YouTube page. Dave and I are rapidly expanding into all the free places we can post.
Anywhere that'll take us.
Anywhere that'll take us for free, we are posting this. So
yes.
Thank you again for your support, and please keep the comments coming. And I've been getting a lot of emails and texts from people throughout the week about their support for the stuff that we're talking about, and just throwing out there some good ideas.
You know who I'm going to follow up with after this, because I watched another live cast of Julie Frost and my sister Melanie in their run group. And they got shit all over the screen. I mean, it's like amazing. They have all their branding. They've got their colors. It's like, how did those girls do that? So
Mel, help us out.
Right. We're working with StreamYard. It's a platform that allows us to stream different places. It's got these cool little things like my next segment, which is unexpected entrepreneurship.
Hey,
oh, look at that. Hey. And there's a lot of other things that we can do on this platform. So, Julia Frost, you guys are just killing it. So let's talk about an unexpected entrepreneur. I am going to embarrass the hell out of my wife. I told her I was going to talk about this, but Michelle Metella Stringer, she is, I think, a good definition of an unexpected entrepreneur. She has a strong background in project management and documentation, and she worked for many different companies in terms of doing things for training, and was very good at it. A couple of years ago, she was laid off through what happens to a lot of people. She was working in Jacksonville. She was able to work remote. Her company was bought out by another company. They consolidated teams, and unfortunately, she didn't make the cut for and she was laid off. So she's been looking for a job for a while, and trying to figure out the right place for her to land in terms of a company. She really liked working from home. She really liked being able to manage her day and get things done. I heard her on many different conference calls. I heard her organizing. And, if we didn't have a nepotism policy in Insignia, I would have hired her a long time ago. And so she continued to look and got very frustrated until we started together a music management company where she has really found herself in terms of being a booking agent and a talent buyer for venues. And she's really starting to break out and to explore all kinds of different ideas for at home making money, trying to find different places, different avenues. Right now, her big thing is Etsy, and she's knitting like
awesome,
crazy. And she's selling things on Etsy, and her store is starting to get going. And I would say that's a great definition of an unexpected entrepreneur, someone who is trying to decide, okay, what do I want to do next? and getting frustrated by, I don't want to just have the same old job I used to have. I want to try something new and try something different. So big shout out to Michelle Stringer for her unexpected entrepreneurship. And we'll keep updating things as we go along, but really proud of her. I'm really proud of what she's doing. So, and thankfully I will have dinner tonight. All right. So that brings us to our next segment, which is Stokey Stories.
Are they ever?
Allow us.
Actually, I wanted to add on to the unexpected entrepreneurship just for a second to plug next week's guest, my good friend Richard Blake. Richard Blake is a Broadway veteran from the time he was a child all the way through the current day. Very good friend of mine. We were in The Wedding Singer on Broadway together. Super guy, tremendously successful actor, but also now a producer. And I want to get him on here and talk to him about having both of those hats on, about having the moving forward, especially in our business, which is something we're going to be talking about a lot on this podcast, about how the entertainment industry is going to be impacted by this. And specifically, from my point of view, how Broadway, which is going to be very specific in how it approaches the new normal. A lot of theater will continue to happen the way it did before throughout the country based on the spread of the pandemic, but things in New York are going to be incredibly interesting, to say the least, and people are going to have to come up with some really good ideas, and they already are. But I want to get Richard on here. He's a smart guy. He's a good guy, incredibly handsome, and get his take on where we are moving forward, and how those of us who have been around for a while are going to be the ones to make the big decisions moving forward. He's a great guy. So next week we'll be talking to Richard, and he said that he wants to pick the drink of the week. So we're going to get his recipe before we start, and we're going to be drinking what he drinks. So
nice.
That will be next week. My Stokey story of the week is only one thing. I don't want to talk about me at all. I want to talk about my friend Nick Cordero and his wife Amanda Klutz, and their 10-month-old son, Elvis. For those of you who are following this story, Amanda has actually been on the morning shows. She was on with Gail King. Is that her name? Yes, yesterday morning. Amanda is a Broadway dancer and a fitness instructor. Her husband, Nick Cordero, is a Tony-nominated actor who has been in a coma for the last month with COVID-19. He's had every complication under the sun. He's had blood clots. He actually had to have his right leg amputated. And we just want him to wake up. He's under very good care, but it's been one thing after another, and he's still fighting. And Amanda is a superwoman, and Nick's going to wake up. We just need him to do it now. Wake up, Nick. And so I'm going to put a link to their page in our line. If you Google Amanda Klutz, Kloots, she is all over the news for good reason. They have a GoFundMe page, because they are going to have a stack of bills. But just send good luck and love and vibes to my friend Nick. He's a great guy. He and I we worked together 6 or 7 years ago. He's a Rock of Ages alumni. I've known him for years. He's a super duper guy. He needs all of our love and all of our support, and so does Amanda, and so does Elvis. So all my love to the Cordero Klutzes and all of our friends who love them. So that's that. Wake up, Nick.
Well, great for bringing that to our group. And so if you're out there and you hear this later, or you're there now, look for that link that Matt will put out there, and let's share some love and share, whatever we can during this time.
Richard Blake, you are watching right now. Sorry, buddy. Richard Blake, if you can you put a link in the comments? Can you link to Amanda's page for us? So just while we're doing it right now, people might be able to have that link. If you can, that would be amazing. Or anybody else who's watching who has the link to Amanda's page or their fundraising page.
Cool.
Thanks, Alice. Thanks, Dave.
It takes a village. So,
you're here.
All right. So we're going to move on to our next section, and this is quite the alliteration. Ready? A Stokey Stories runs into the Stringer Strategy Session.
So much alliteration. So much.
So I had an instance this past week and I'm going to do my best to keep all of the details away so that I don't call anyone out. But it was a great example to me of the entrepreneurship struggle, the CEO struggle, the founder struggle, the leadership struggle between impulse and intuition. And so I wanted to do a quick little strategy session for you and for our audience for what's the difference between impulse and intuition. And as a CEO or as an entrepreneur, impulse and intuition are things we live with on a daily basis. A lot of us have impulse control issues. And a lot of us also have great intuition, which is what makes a good entrepreneur. The intuition to see something around the corner, the intuition to know that a product or service that they could bring to the marketplace is something that people will want and like, and hopefully make that person money, build a company, make jobs, that kind of good stuff. So impulse, in this case, this person, this entrepreneur is trying to get their brand going. They're trying to help themselves to, get exposure. And they posted something on social media, and it wasn't worded in a professional way. It wasn't on brand strategy. It had no focus whatsoever. And what it was an impulse. I got to do something. So let me do something really quick. And there, out it goes. And then the person comes to me and says, hey, guess what I did? And I'm like, what did you do now? So that's impulse. That's impulse of, I got to do something right now. I don't know what else to do, so I'm just going to do something, right? Intuition is very different from impulse. Intuition is, and I have this occasionally, I call it the force. I'll be sitting at my desk or standing at my desk, or I'll be driving, and I think of someone that I haven't talked to or that I haven't followed up with because we had a conversation going, a sales conversation going, and something will happen, and I will say, oh, I need to reach back out to that person. That's intuition, because that is the universe telling me, hey, I need to do something about this. Intuition is a great example of it right now, that I know several entrepreneurs that are getting together to figure out how they can take disinfectant that kills COVID-19 into churches, right? So great intuition right now. It might be a little obvious, but the intuition to go towards places where people will want to gather in order to keep those people safe. So I challenge anybody out there that's a CEO or an entrepreneur to start thinking about, when you come up with an idea, to categorize it as, is it intuition or is it an impulse, right? Because both can be bad. I mean, both can end up in negative results. Both can end up in positive results. Sometimes an impulse can help you to get somewhere new. And I think it's really important as an entrepreneur and as a CEO to figure out the difference between those, because it will guide you and it will help you. And if it is an impulse, if you think it's an impulse, and bounce it off somebody else. Hey, I'm having this thought. Should I do this or not? This person that did this didn't get any counsel whatsoever from anybody. Just did it, right? So if you have an impulse to do something, bounce it off someone, a colleague, another entrepreneur, another CEO. Hey, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? How does that strike you? And you will be amazed at what gets bounced back at you to help you with those impulses and those intuitions to guide you into positive territory. Make any sense whatsoever? I'm going to take it. All right.
Well, and I think that one of our segments that we're going to be doing moving forward, which is something we talked about last week, which is don't do that. Which something we talked about. The common mistakes that are made, especially in my chosen avocation. especially among young performers, is that exact thing, that line between impulsivity and intuition, because you don't really have any intuition when you're young. You have tons of impulses. You've got every impulse. And we are taught as performers to be impulsive within the framework of playing a character. But oftentimes it extends into impulsivity in what could be a less than constructive way. And something we're going to talk about is how the uncanny ability people have to talk themselves right out of jobs. So
I really want to have that segment together, and we're going to compare the difference between auditioning for a role and selling something.
100%. I mean, that's all we're doing. I mean, we talked about that a little bit last week, is that as performers, that's all we're doing every time we walk in the door, is selling our product, which is us, which is also why it's 100% personal. So we had a teacher in college. His name is Tony McKay. He's still at Carnegie Mellon, wonderful guy. But he laid it down to us when we were freshmen, and he said, "Congratulations, you have elected to be hurt for a living."
Right on. Right. In sales, you go into sales, and it's like, you better be okay with the word no, because you're going to hear it a lot.
Melanie, yes, that is where you get your impulsivity. So I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's in you. It's in all of us.
There's some great comments coming through. We'll take some comments, and we'll play around with some comments shortly here.
Thank you to Liz McConaughey and to Richard Blake for posting the link to the fun page for Nick and Amanda. Thank you very much, guys.
Okay, so backstage, we're going to bring him on set. Micah Davidson is the founder of Midwood Entertainment. Was established in 2015. These guys focus on a diverse roster of musicians and producing events. I know that they do talent buying and festival production throughout North Carolina and South Carolina and then into Virginia. Festivals such as the North Carolina Brewery and Music Festival, the Amplified Decatur Music Festival, the Bristol Rhythm and Roots Reunion, which hopefully will happen in September. So without further ado, if I don't screw it up and kick him out of the whole thing completely, let's bring on Micah Davidson.
Well,
Mike,
hey,
you there?
Woo.
Hello.
Oh,
do I need my raincoat? Do I need a microphone? Little raincoat or anything like that? The water behind me is, the waves. They're hitting me.
Right.
All those things. That's right.
And we did it.
Weather is lovely though.
We did establish that none of us are standing in front of green screens. These are our real rooms. So that's really your room, right?
This is 49th Street and 9th Avenue in Midtown Manhattan. It's wonderful.
You can't prove that. We can't see that far.
It's true.
So Micah, welcome to the show. Welcome to
Thanks for having me.
We really appreciate you being on here. You've got great experience in the music business. You work with a lot of artists. You work with a lot of events, a lot of festivals, a lot of shows. So we thought it would be awesome to have you talk about where we are in the music business right now, specific to we're 6 to 8 weeks into the close downs all over the nation. And the music business has taken a pretty hard hit. I've seen, and yet there's these magical things happening called streaming and the No Contact concert series, and so talk to us about the music industry and give us an update.
Well, this is where most people would be like, oh, well, the music industry is alive and well and things like that, except it's not. It is very much not. It still exists, and everybody's navigating it in different ways. I would say the majority of the summer at this point for just about any show, inside or outside, is probably a non-thing that anybody should be thinking about, and they should be trying to get ticket refunds and so on. And let me take a step back real quick and also preface that all of these things we're going to talk about are certainly my opinions and what I see as trends. Doesn't mean that they should be taken as fact or anything like that. And I'm not saying that they're not facts. I'm just simply saying that I'm basing it off of what I'm seing in the world,
I think you're in a safe space here because we pretty much brought this together as hey, this is we're just talking, and so that's right. We'll giving you a virtual hug. So
That's right.
You're in a safe space.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it is. You know, in this industry, I think we all have to sort of think about the difference between what we hope to happen and then also being able to be real about, you know, what's going on and look at the hard truths and still find a way to stay positive inside of all of those things as well. We are all certainly hopeful that there will be shows in the fall. To what size and what scale that is, nobody really knows yet. For the venues, nobody really knows what the capacities are going to be. We are hearing rumors about opening up at 50% capacity for the indoor places. Outdoor is a different situation. And of course, as you start to get to larger and larger events / theaters and arenas and things like that are, say, 3,000 people and more, all of those things are questionable in general. I mean, we're constantly seeing tours being postponed. Phish just announced that their entire summer tour is being postponed to 2021. Rage Against the Machine just announced that their reunion tour is being postponed to June 2021. Hopefully there's still a reunioned band a year from now. You know,
right.
So
by then we're calling the whole damn thing off.
That's right. So, you know, I think there's a lot of things that are being navigated, but you literally have, I think a lot of the fans, I will go ahead and talk about this a little bit. I think the fans in general think very much about the bands that they no longer can have the access to go get tickets for and go see shows. And they're not really thinking about the true aspect of the behind the scenes. There's a lot of people before that band even takes the stage. There's a lot of people that have helped make that show happen, between talent buyers who work for venues or festivals, the agents who represent the bands who are negotiating the deals to get them into that venue or onto that festival, production companies, which are the sound companies and lighting companies and audio companies. And I say that from audiovisual, like the people, if you go to a big major festival and there's screens halfway down, there are people who do that. All of the gig workers who help do that, hospitality people, catering, overall site logistics, even people who handle things as little as ice. All of those people have lost their jobs. So all of those people are not making any money.
So let's break that down a little bit, because the structure of so many of those events and venues, they didn't have any kind of rainy day fund for something like this, you know. Correct. So when you cancel these shows, I mean, most of those people, like you talk about gig workers, most of those people are, you know, 1099 contract employees, right? I mean, well, contractor employees.
Yeah, and sometimes those people are literally week to week with their pay and month to month with their pay, and there's not enough money coming in. You know, they love what they do, but they don't have a rainy day fund on any level.
So have you heard of any of those folks? Because some of the new unemployment guidelines allowed for gig workers to apply for that. Have you seen that across the board? And have those people, as far as you've heard, been successful in being able to get that? And is that any kind of small relief for the situation?
There have been some people I know that have gotten some of them have gotten unemployment. Some of them, if they were not just straight individuals, if they had, even gig workers can have their own company. They can be a sole proprietor and have their own LLC. Right. I think, Matt, you talked about this, I think last week. I remember hearing you talk about this, that if you are, whether you're too late to do it now, so to speak, to help you in this exact environment, I would encourage every gig worker to start their own LLC. And it doesn't have to be anything creative. Literally, you can go online and start them. You can find an accountant to help you start them, all of that. But
very easy.
It could literally be, if your name is Micah Davidson, you could literally be Micah Davidson LLC. Like, it doesn't have to be anything that's creative. Call it whatever you want to call it. But by doing that you would then be paying yourself off of that, and then you would have opportunity to collect things like the PPP on the Paycheck Protection Program on top of unemployment. And those are things, people who have those abilities already are people who are definitely taking advantage of that. And for the most part, that has seemed to be successful. There's some employees who work for me who are gig workers, and this is their full-time job, and they make a full-time living doing it, but they're agents and they're commission based. And so when the gigs are canceled, all their money is canceled and all of that as well. And some of them actually this week, not only were able to get some employment going, but also receive their paycheck protection program stuff, which has nothing to do with my company. Those are things that they applied for themselves because they own their own LLCs.
So smart. Yeah, so
So-
smart. That's smart. And yes, in this situation, you would have had to have started. You would have had to have the groundwork laid, months and years ago, potentially, in order to establish that to apply for the
February 1st, 2020. Yeah.
Right. And it's good that there are some people that were doing that. So could be a model for future. So
Yes.
Following suit, and maybe we'll have a whole session about how do you incorporate or LLC and what the differences are and tax differences and all that kind of stuff. So
and liability differences. I mean, the reality is if you're a sole proprietor, sure, you have some liability, but you do have some level of a shield between your personal assets and your professional assets if you start an LLC, even if you're the only person working for that company.
That's an awesome point. Yeah.
If I can interject, when the Trump administration took over and they changed the tax laws, which happens quite often when it goes from Democrat to Republican and back and forth, and they removed the ability for those of us as actors to make individual deductions. Like it's basically our bread and butter as performers to deduct everything from our taxes. Everything are write-offs, every single thing, like you name it, and they're all of our personal write-offs. And when the tax changed back to a more Republican version of it, we had to take a standard deduction, and that really affects performers. So my accountant, God bless her, I mentioned her last week, Ginger O'Toole at theassociatestax.com. She finally, after years, convinced me. She said, "Here, I'm going to show you in black and white exactly how much money you're going to save if you form a corporation. And we as actors can't be LLCs. We can only be S corps or C corps if you're, I think if you're married or something. But so I performed the S corp, or I formed the S corp through her, and it's been a godsend. And it immediately made me eligible for unemployment as the S corp, and not as Matt Stokey working for Tartan 5. My S corp was eligible for the CARES Act unemployment benefits, which is not the same amount that an individual gets, but it's something so that I'm not hemorrhaging money during this.
It's a benefit. You were still working, even though you're working for yourself, you were working for a company.
Precisely.
And that is the difference. And that is something I'll sort of talk about this for just a quick second. One of the things that me and some friends in the industry are doing is we've thought about the fact that when we were growing up and we were in high school and things like that, we were talking about the aspect of, we were literally, it was constantly about playing an instrument. Everything you learned on the music level when you're in high school and junior high and everything is about playing an instrument, whether it be a band, like, orchestral band, or it be a rock and roll band or something like that. It was all about that. And it dawned on us that if I had known what I know now, even a glimpse of what I know now when I was in high school, not only would I have had more knowledge when I went into college and stuff, but I would have probably been able to offer more security, if you will, to my parents, knowing that I wanted to go into an industry of music. And there's so many other aspects of this industry that people don't know about. So we're actually working on, the reason why I bring this up is to take off, to keep rolling on the business aspect of this.
Yeah,
is that we're designing a program to teach to a local school of rock here and teach their higher level kids so they can learn about festival production. They can learn about negotiating deals in case they want to be an agent or a manager. They can learn about marketing for a festival. They can learn about talent buying for a festival, the other business aspects of it, because there's so many other avenues of learning. But having those general basis of understanding the business and how that affects you are huge things.
This is awesome. I'm going to throw this comment up there for Melanie. And I want to specifically touch on this really quick because I see this a lot, not only with performers, but just entrepreneurs in general. So the answer is yes, 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 yes. Make sure that you have the discipline enough to separate this money totally. So when you receive money as an LLC or an S Corp, work with an accountant, work with
somebody to do it for you.
Right.
Yes.
Work with a professional who will tell you how much to take out and how much to leave in to pay yourself, as well as leave enough money in so that at the end of the year, you're not stuck upside down in taxes. So Mel, great question. And it's one of those that gives me the heebie-jeebies anytime I start working with an entrepreneur and we really get into the details of how they've structured their business and what they're doing and how they run their money. And they're like, well, yeah, I pay for my car through my business. Well, that's a very legitimate thing to do sometimes. If you are a contractor and you need a van that drives you around to your different jobs, right? But if you're leasing your Lexus LS and you're running that through your business, that's a horrible thing to do. And I run from entrepreneurs that want to run their personal lives through their business. It's not your bank account. It's the company's bank account. And you have to think those things differently. All right. So that's awesome. Well, how do I get rid of that? I'm going to hide it.
Hey Dave, can I ask Micah something that I just saw in a post today? Micah, I saw that something is happening in Sweden. Have you seen these drive-in concerts?
Yes. So these are. I thought I saw also one in Lithuania as well. That these are concerts where they're pulling out a huge stage. I don't know. It's hard to tell exactly from the pictures. I'm certainly not a staging expert, so I couldn't look at the pictures and tell how big. But my guess is it's at least a 40 by 40, if not even bigger size stage. And it's a little misleading because it looks like there's sound equipment on the side, but it says that there are, most of these from what I'm seeing are saying that there's no sound equipment on the stage. They're literally airing. They're sending it out as a radio signal into people's cars. Yep. And but what is interesting about that, I don't know how sustainable it is. Right. It's an amazing thought, and it's one that I've actually talked about with a couple of my clients in general for some of the concert series that we produce. But the questions that we don't understand are, one, if you think about, if I'm going to produce a festival or a concert series, you're talking about a headliner and a support band, maybe, and it's a one-day event. And it's a concert series, and doors are at 6, and show starts at 7, and it's over by 10 or 10:30, something like that. You've got, you can have like 2,000 people, let's say. If I start replacing all of those people with cars, you've got obviously less space, and then you have to have space for those cars to be able to maneuver. What I'm seeing is that they're talking about 2 people per car, unless they're people who live together. And how you prove that, I think you can do 3 or 4 people, right? Like you can do a little bit more of a family.
Can't get out of the car.
But you can't get out. Exactly. You can't get out of the car. So how do you sell a ticket that's affordable? Certainly you need to get sponsorships and stuff like that, but the production value in general, to have the people who are in that back row feel like they can see, and it's a back row of cars. And keep in mind, again, you're parking cars. There has to be space in between each row for those cars to be able to get out and leave and park and all of that stuff when they come in. So that back row is however many feet far from or football fields almost at that point from the stage. Can they see anything? They can hear the show, but they can't get out of the car. So how do they go to the bathroom? How do you sell a ticket that's viable and potentially cover costs? Yeah, I would love to do an idea where it's like, you put a band on stage and you do like boxed lunch, if you will, or boxed dinner, and it comes with like a bottle of wine for the car and, two meals, and you sell that involved in the ticket and stuff like that. But even then, you're still going to be talking about how expensive does that ticket have to be for that to be a sustainable model. I love the idea, and I haven't done it yet myself, and I don't know if I will. I think it's an incredible idea, and I think it's an incredible creative idea. What I will say is it might be more viable in other countries because it feels like other countries, sorry, America, other countries tend to support the arts in general much better than the U.S. does. So there might be government funding that is available to be able to make those things more sustainable that we don't have that ability here.
Yeah. Or they're just willing to pay a higher price.
Exactly.
So let's talk about for a second, let's keep going with the music industry and talk about what the future does look like. I mean, from your perspective, you're obviously planning for the future or trying to at least have some sort of semblance of planning for the future. Right. Where is your headspace in Midwood Entertainment for what the future looks like?
Well, I'm gonna steal somebody else's line from a town hall conference call that I was on earlier this week, which is you're talking about how do you go back into the house when the house is still on fire? Okay. It is too early to really be able to truly see how does this work. And because we don't have a federal message, it's all done by state. you have to look at how these different states affect each other.
Ooh.
You know, if Virginia opens later than Tennessee, then if you have a festival that is in Virginia, can people from Tennessee or people from Virginia are going to start to go into Tennessee? Or let's say, I'm sorry, let me do that in reverse. Tennessee opens before Virginia. You have a festival that's in Tennessee. People from Virginia will drive to Tennessee to go to that festival, right? Or go to that club, or go to the business, the restaurant, whatever it might be, because they're allowed to do that in that state. Maybe if you live in the middle of Virginia, you're not driving to Tennessee, but if you live on the border, you're probably going to drive into, you know, or so on. You're going to drive to the state that's next door.
Right.
And the question is how do those things affect each other? There's so many different factors that go into all of this that we don't know. And, you know, Matt, to talk about you having coronavirus and stuff, and I know you're not downplaying it by any means, but there's a huge amount of population that are 100% downplaying it, whether they've stayed home, whether they're focused on just the economy aspect of it.
Yeah.
All of those things affect it. And the music industry is constantly saying that if we open, we can only open once. And if we open wrong, it's going to set us way back even further than where we're already looking at now. And, you know, the state of California, the governor said that no large events will be happening, I believe, through the rest of the year. And I don't know what large events it means. You know, is that 1,000 people or more? Is that 2,000 people or more? And what we're also looking at is they're not separating mass gatherings in the concert world with small venues. So your 200 cap venue is not being a separate conversation than your 10,000 cap festival or arena or anything like that. So there's a lot. It's really, really hard to see exactly what things are going to do. Lots of people are rescheduling shows in the future for the second or third time, but nobody really truly knows exactly. And what are the capacities going to be when we do open? So
And Micah, I think that's one of the things that Dave and I started talking about, you know, several weeks ago when we started talking about even doing this podcast, was that very thing about, you know, the building, if it's not still on fire, it's still smoking and it's really kind of tenuous.
Yeah.
But the variables that go into it, especially, like I said, if we're talking about Broadway in particular, is very different from what might happen in regional theater. It's very different what might happen in national tours of things. What's going to happen in concerts of musicals and things like that. People are going to come up with ideas for that. So like you said, you can't, it's because it is state by state, and because New York, specifically New York City, was hit so hard, it's going to be a very different situation here from, say, if they want to open up Denver Theater Center, where there might have been very little presence. Now, again, one of our problems is going to be what we're going to face is the fact that, because, as you said, there are people who 100% downplay this, there are probably going to be very quick upticks in what happens over the next couple of months when we're trying to reopen things. I'm going to agree with the scientists. Call me crazy.
You're crazy. You're totally crazy.
You're crazy. You're crazy.
You're crazy. You're crazy.
I'm going to go with science as opposed to anything else. It's going to be a very touchy thing when if we do jump the gun. If certain places jump the gun, it's going to be a huge setback. So I think that's obviously one of the things that's going to be a recurring theme with our podcast right now, is talking to people like you. We all do very similar things, and all of it depends on interaction with people. None of us 100%. Are in IT.
And I think until there's a vaccine, we're going to see that, just like you're talking about. We're going to see ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs until there's a vaccine that actually solves the problem. And I think that people need to also remember that they keep saying it's going to come back in the fall. As it gets warmer, we'll have fewer cases. And maybe we will, because I'm certainly not a doctor. However, the reality is, if you look at it's affecting the rest of the world. And there's lots of places in this world that are very much affected, who have much hotter climates than we do all year round. And it's not changing just because it's in warm weather versus cold weather. And I think that's probably, again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist on any level, but I think that that's something that people aren't really thinking about.
So let's talk about for a second what the industry is doing, which we're seeing evolve right in front of us on Facebook and other streaming services. When you it's the classic example of, okay, let's get ingenious. Let's figure out a way to still reach our fans. So talk a little bit about the bands that you're working with and their strategy to do more streaming. And I guess my follow-up to that is, after a couple of examples, is that going away in your opinion? I mean, are we going to see streaming here from here on out?
Well, I think we need to remember that streaming was around before the virus happened. People were, this is not something that's new. We are 100% seeing more and more and more artists on a regular basis doing streaming because everybody's in their own home and they've lost income.
They're bored.
Yeah, exactly. Or bored. And they're learning new techniques. You certainly see some artists who are 5-piece bands, but you can't get them all together in a room. So you've got 2 of them that might live together. So they've learned how to do duo sets. Or there are software out there where you can get them all into a digital room together and have them create, I think something's called acapella, where they can all do that. And they can layer those things. Yeah, exactly. I'm not singing. It's not going to happen regardless of what David said I might do. And David, you're muted, but
I know we just had food delivered to the door.
Okay, you got it. I think lots of bands are doing that, but again, it's something that everybody was already doing, but we're seeing it in a much more mass aspect of it. People were, the Capitol Theater in New York, up in Worcester, or however it's pronounced up there, Worcestershire, whatever it is, they've been streaming shows for almost every single one of their shows, and you can pay to watch them. There's lots of shows that are being re-aired that were in big, large environments or even smaller environments, but where they were producing a show that had really great video quality in general, and they were doing that streaming. They're using all of that content, re-airing it. So it's different. I think what's going to start to happen, though, is people are going to develop different techniques on how to do it so that there's better quality sound. We're seeing lots of festivals that are doing live streaming aspects of their festival. And if you really think about it, the couple things that are missing are the true live sound and good quality. And then the other thing is the artist interaction, because we're all standing there, we're all sitting in front of our computers or our TVs, and maybe we're by ourselves, maybe we're with a loved one or two, but for the most part, we're not having that true interaction. We're only interacting with that person who might be sitting next to us, and we miss the aspect of interacting with other people who are at shows. And I think we're going to start to see different things develop like that. I know Netflix right now has a partnership with Google, where if you watch Netflix through Google Chrome, you can do something where you can watch Netflix movies as a community. So you can actually literally be watching it with other friends and stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you see each other's faces or if you're just making comments and things like that. I haven't done it yet, but I think we're going to start to see more of that, more incorporate that. There's certainly some things that people are doing to incorporate the better sound and better visual experience. I know that's one of the things we're going to talk about, because that's one of the things that we are doing with the No Contact Concert Series. But I still think the missing component is still that audience participation aspect. Yes, you may have 20,000 people watching a show online, but none of them are watching it together. So how do you create that experience where they can be creating their own? Yes, you see all these watch parties and stuff, but again, they're commenting together, and doing things like that, but they're not truly like, how do you put a camera in somebody's house and let them dance with 3 other, windows open with all their other friends dancing and stuff like that to a show? So
that's going to be a level I didn't even think of. That again, I think that's pretty innovative, and it's yet another level of how this thing is evolving. So if we think that streaming is going to be a normal thing, it's going to become normal, it's going to expose you to more people, then what is the purpose of the venue? And especially as we look at potentially smaller capacities, this was an idea I was sort of brainstorming with an artist side hustle, Anton LaPlume. We were talking about it, and sort of my idea was that small venues are now going to become premium experiences. I'm not going to pay $8 to see my favorite local band. I'm going to pay $25 because I'm one of a fewer number that can get into the building. And is that a good thing? Is that just a necessary evil for the venue to stay afloat? It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
There's going to be a balance, I think, because something that has to be taken into consideration is that there's 30 million people who have lost their jobs. And however long that lasts, how many of those can afford to go out for a $25 ticket versus an $8 ticket? I do think that people, to some extent, I think venues will absolutely continue to be relevant. Let me say that first. I think live experience, there's nothing like, whether you leave yourself in your car, you bring it inside, there's nothing like being in a room and the temperature changes with all the different bodies in the room. There's sweat when people are dancing, all of that. There's an aroma that comes from that space, whether it be because of cigarette smoke, puke on the floor, or drugs in the air, whatever it might be. There's a reality that there's an atmosphere.
Wow. What kind of shows do you go to, Micah?
The good ones. There's an environment out there. There's an aura when you go into those rooms that you do not get from watching it at home. And nothing can replace that. Nothing can replace the visceral aspect of going to see live music, period. Same thing with theater. There's, I could watch a movie, great, sure, I might tear up, but I'm probably going to get a much different level of tear up, probably doing an ugly cry or something like that if I go see Matt on stage. Now, Matt, I haven't seen you act yet, so maybe I might be crying like, why am I watching this? But it may be, but point being is that there's a visceral reaction when you're seeing anything live.
And that's one of the things that in speaking about the sort of streaming aspect, and this is for another show completely, but it's one of the things that I believe in the theater world need to try our damnedest to avoid. We need to try to come up with any other idea that doesn't make it easily accessible for people beyond the pandemic to sit at home and watch theater, and as opposed to going to theater. I think we really need to be far more creative in our ways that we approach the next year before there is a vaccine, to really hopefully not go directly into that world of just like, let's have people on stage at the Hirschfeld Theater and we're going to set up 4 cameras and we're going to shoot Moulin Rouge and we're going to broadcast it across the country. I think it's a very dangerous precedent.
But at the same time, it's going to be everything has to do with adaptability, and survival will be all about that. And there's going to be necessary evils, so to speak, between now and when there's a vaccine. And we are the first industry to close, the last industry to open, the entertainment industry. And so, everybody's talking about their hair salons and tattoo parlors and bowling alleys, depending on what state you're in, they're opening and stuff like that. If I owned a bowling alley, and I'm saying this out there in the world, I would open up a section of that to be a tattoo parlor and a section of that to maybe even produce shows or something like that, put a band in one corner or whatever thing. I mean, if you think about it, you live in New York, Brooklyn Bowl. Brooklyn Bowl is a bowling alley that is a live music venue.
That's exactly right.
And it's an extremely popular one. They've got one in London, one in Vegas, and one in Nashville as well as New York. And so if I owned a bowling alley, I would be looking at doing some of those things because I now all of a sudden have the ability to be open before anybody else does.
Yeah.
So
that's fantastic. Yeah.
I don't own a bowling alley though, but so that doesn't really work that way. But we are going to have to continue to adapt and adapt and adapt because of all of that stuff. And until there's a vaccine, we can't even think about what a normal is.
Agreed.
And there may be less venues because some of them won't survive. Some of them may be bought up by Live Nation and things like that and AEG. There might be fewer agencies. There's probably going to be fewer bands depending on how long this lasts. Everything depends on, and certainly depending on who the band is and depending on how people on the streaming aspect are arranging their shows, whether they be ticketed shows or they be donation-based. The longer people don't have jobs, the less often they're going to be able to make a donation. The less often they're going to be able to buy a ticket, regardless of if it's streaming or if it's actually truly at a venue. But I think venues are going to come back for sure, and the smaller ones will certainly come back before the bigger ones, and there will be live experiences there. But it's still really hard to tell because even at 133 cap venue, if you're operating at 50% capacity, that means you're doing shows with only 68 people in the venue. And how do you take a band that may have been a $5,000 band and they were doing a $50 and $85 tickets, 50 for regular reserve and 85 VIP or whatever? How do you take that show and make it feasible for an artist to make money and for a patron to actually be able to pay and show up? Now that's where the combination of the two things, people are talking about that as well, streaming and so on.
And I guess if I'm the artist up on the stage, it's what a bummer that I am expecting a packed house, which is half the capacity, and they're all sort of distanced away from each other. I mean, what a very bizarre experience we're in for as we move forward to that.
Yeah, we're going to have to change
So what do you, festivals, let's talk about festivals for a few minutes. What's the thinking of festivals right now? I mean, I guess, is there any headspace, or are they all still at the same, like you said, they're just all sort of waiting to see what happens? I mean, is the whole, I guess the car business is moving forward, I guess, because they're still selling cars. They're thinking about the future. I got to believe there's people in the music industry thinking about the future, at least conceiving of it. So
we're thinking about it. But again, if you think about the financial aspect of it, the reality is, to use the car business, since you brought it up, I see car commercials left and right, and people can buy cars if they want to. I don't understand how the test driving, and are they changing the length of, like, certain states have cool off periods and stuff where you can return a car if you don't like it. And I don't understand. I don't know what dealerships are doing.
It's all over the place. We would be here for another 2 hours if I got into that.
Exactly. We'll do a revisit and talk about your industry. So, but I think that is the difference. Is again, ours is a visceral thing where you cannot do it. You cannot replace a live performance, whether it's acting, whether it's some kind of performance art, whether it is music, whatever it might be, poetry, whatever it may be. There's nothing, you cannot replace a live experience. And if you have a 40,000 person event, and the only way for you to do it is by doing it with 20,000 people, the question is how does that alter your budget? How do you, what are the bands that you can get? Because you're talking about only being able to bring in half as many people. And are you going to continue to charge $500 a ticket for a weekend, even as the cheapest GA package? Or is now that all of a sudden your actual VIP package? Because again, people have lost their jobs. There's all of those things that have to be thought about. And when can you even do that? At what point are we going to get to where we can do a 2,000 to 3,000 person festival before we even think about doing an arena show or something like that, or an indoor performance of any kind? Regardless, I don't think you can. It's very hard to plan that aspect. One thing that I do wish I would see more often, though, right now, is there's a lot of festivals that were in the spring that just went ahead and rescheduled to the fall. I honestly, though I understand the line of thinking of it, I wish that they had just gone ahead and punted to 2021. Every single one that's had to punt, just punt to the following year, because the other thing that has to be thought about is how does it impact a normal year of touring for any particular artist.
Yeah.
And if you do a festival that's normally in June and you move it to September of the same year, what is your marketing turnaround if you're going to do it again in June the following year, when things get back to normal? If you're not going to do it in June, you decide we still need a year to produce that event properly. So we're going to still do it in September. Now we're going to keep doing it in September. How does that affect your scope of other festivals in the region?
Right. The other
How
festivals.
does the band tour, your radiuses, clubs, all of that stuff, they're agents who plan an entire year round.
Do you think those tours, not tours, do you think those festivals, because the Shaky Knees, which Michelle and I go to quite a bit in Atlanta, they did that. They pushed to September, I think it is.
Right.
Do you think that was just buying them some time, and they will eventually come back and go, sorry, we're going to go ahead and just reschedule for 2021? I mean,
yes.
Any insight? Yeah.
Well, I mean,
not insight. I mean, that's not fair. I'm not putting.
Yeah, insight. I'm not talking with those people, and
you heard it here. Micah Davidson just reported Shaky Knees.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Tim Sweetwood, who's a friend, is incredibly talented at all of the Shaky events, and he does other events throughout the country. He works with C3 Presents now, based out of Austin. He's a good guy. I have not talked with him on any level about that, but I would say that the majority of those festivals, if you look at even Jazz Fest, Jazz Fest punted to the fall, and I don't think they really made an announcement for that they were going to do it in the fall.
Right.
But internally inside the industry, they moved it to the fall first. Then they've just gone ahead and released a public thing that said we're going to go ahead and do it in 2021. I think that there's, and again, that you're talking about over 100,000 people a day at that festival. Is that even possible for 2021?
Right.
We'll see.
So if you were a small band right now, either you were a small band moving into COVID-19, or you've connected with some people over live stream, and now suddenly you're coming out of COVID-19 as a band. What are the things that you're thinking about as a way to build your level of exposure and do the things that are going to help you sort of succeed going forward?
Well, I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure how to answer that question properly. You should have Rusty Cole on this, who is the owner of Under the Sea Management out of Charleston, as well as the head of the booking division for Midwood Entertainment. You should have him on maybe a later episode and talk about the band strategies in general. I would say if you're thinking about starting a band right now, I would tell you potentially don't. But I would say
write music. I mean, maybe not start a band, but write music. Don't.
Put it down, Matt.
Put
it down.
I'm part of the Wilson band. I'm already in a band.
Awesome. I would say what you really need to do is you need to be thinking outside the box. And I would also say that box at this point, yes, it's on fire, but it's also been stomped out by somebody's foot, and it's now in pieces all over the floor. So that box could be as broad of a spectrum as you want to be. Like there's almost no box, and just think, period. Find a way to be innovative, whether that is creating different live stream opportunities, whether that is creating different styles of music. I don't know exactly how to tell a band, especially because every band's going to have a different genre and a different tactic and how it should go. To me, the live streaming thing that's going on right now, I was talking about this with a friend earlier, live streaming is very based in the jam band world. It's always been that way. There's not as many bands outside of it. There are some, but there's not as many bands outside of it that have usually been doing a lot of live streaming. Yes, there are big festivals that might have done some live streaming, like maybe Glastonbury or something like that, big rock and roll festivals. But for the most part, the jam band scene on a regular throughout the year, and jam band is a loose word. You can take American roots music from a standpoint of like the blues and some country Americana and things like that. They've been figuring out how to do streaming and make money off of that for a while. I think it's the other, so I can speak a little better about that, but I think it's the other industries that are it's going to be interesting to see how the industry as a whole across the board changes and evolves during all of that.
Cool.
But Rusty would be better to talk to as far as the true band strategy on that.
All right. Well, we are rounding an hour. So we were targeting 45 minutes, but we knew this might happen. We're
solving all the problems of the world. The boxes are on fire. The houses are smoldering.
We're trying.
Right.
We're trying. One emoji at a time. So
every single time those boxes and houses have been rebuilt, though, let's not be afraid of it. Let's embrace it.
Here's to that, entrepreneur.
Right.
Yeah. So, Micah, anything else that you want to share with our audience before we close down the show? Sure.
Well, tonight at 8:00 is the 4th installment of the No Contact Concert Series, which is a series we haven't talked about that much, but it is a concert series that the production company, we produce festivals around the Southeast. The production company, Kodak Sound, who is based out of Morganton, North Carolina, has a warehouse in Hickory, North Carolina. And in that warehouse, they have a floor that is street level.
I think it's pronounced Hickory.
Hickory? In Hickory, North Carolina. They have a big warehouse that they have converted into a venue space. It is not a normal venue, but they have a stage. They built a broadcast booth. They put full audio, full lights and everything. And they brought in some cameras. They partnered with JBL Audio to bring in some cameras and some equipment. And we are producing a full, as close to a full live experience as we possibly can. Tonight's performer is Cruz Contreras. He's coming solo. It's the first solo artist we've had. We've had 3 artists on it so far. We are booked through the end of June. It's once a week, either on Fridays and Saturdays. You can check it out at No Contact Concert Series. You can look it up on YouTube and on Facebook.
Make sure you put a link in the comments here for the show.
I'm not on Facebook at the moment. I'm just doing this through StreamYard. So,
all right, never mind. I'll do it.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. Appreciate it. But that is, I think that's something that's really great. It's a free series to watch. The artists we're raising money for people through donations, and that money goes to everyone involved in the process. Even Cruz is coming solo, but we are expecting that all of that money is, put towards his band as well that he's not bringing with him. And his agents should be commissioned. And even though we don't allow people to bring their own sound men and stuff like that, because we have all that gear and we want everything to be safe and things like that, We want you to pay your soundman if you have a soundman and so on, even though you're not bringing them. The purpose of this is really to make sure that the industry on some level, no individual show is going to save anybody's house or livelihood or anything like that, but it's still an opportunity for bands to come and get together and perform. And it is a true live experience.
Mark Wilson, if you're still watching, book the Wilson van on that, would you? He was on here a second ago. Mark, Micah, Mark.
Hi, Mark. You got to come down to Hickory. Hickory. That's the only way to do it.
He needs to come up to Hickory. Well, I need to come down to Hickory.
Okay. Well, I'll let you guys figure out your routing. But you do have to come. That is, I will say, the only downfall. But at the same time, it is. We've had a really, really great experience with it. Again, Cruz Contreras is tonight. Unspoken Tradition out of Asheville is next week. Hank, Patty, and the Current are the week after that. They're based out of Raleigh. The Get Right Band, another Asheville band, is May 23rd. South Hill Banks is going to be on May 30th. And then we get into Front Country is going to be driving in from Nashville in June. And we continue to go on from there. Shows are being updated and added weekly and such. And we're doing marketing and all of that stuff. So it's just a different way that we have been adapting in today's environment.
Well done.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm trying to find the link here to post it in the. Of course, now I'm all messed up on my phone. I can't find it, but we'll post it in. We'll post it in there. What?
We'll get it in there.
We'll get it in there.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome. So, wait, I'm almost there. Almost got it. And posted. Boom. Yeah. Thank you.
Done. You're a great assistant. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, what you pay for, my friend. So, Micah Davidson, thank you so much from Midwood Entertainment. Matt Stokey.
Thanks for having me, fellas.
Stay healthy. Next week, we're gonna keep doing this, Matt. Are we gonna keep doing it?
Dude, we've got a cavalcade of special guest stars.
So
starting with Micah Davidson and rolling on
is Richard Blake, good friend of Matt Stokey. He already talked about him, and we will talk to him next week.
We'll do a little promo between now and then. I'll get Richard to say a little bit, and we'll pitch it for next week, and we'll talk largely about a lot of the stuff that we covered with Micah today, and starting to delve into the seemingly very problematic world of theater. But we'll once again come up with a lot of good ideas. Great job, Micah. Love talking to you, man.
Yeah, thank you, Micah. Thank you for everybody and all your comments. We'll go back through and reply to some comments. So have a great weekend. Happy Friday. Cheers.
Safe, everybody.
Just in time for another cocktail. All right.
Have a great weekend, guys.
Great evening, everyone.
Later.
Good night, guys.